Kamala Harris right now is no longer a long shot. She's no longer even the dark horse. It seems to me that Kamala Harris right now is leading in the polls against Donald Trump. The most recent polls that we have show that Vice President Kamala Harris is actually leading Donald Trump in the national polls. Now, this is a huge change from a month ago. If you remember, a month ago, Joe Biden was struggling. Joe Biden was not only down in every swing state, but it didn't look like he could win in the swing states. But according to the latest polls, Harris has a 6-point lead over Donald Trump in a national survey and a 3-point lead in another one. Now, this is important because it shows that Kamala Harris is gaining support at the right time. She's ahead in Arizona. She's ahead in Michigan. She's ahead in Wisconsin. She's ahead in Pennsylvania. These are states that are crucial for winning the presidency. Now, I've seen some other polls that show her tied at Pennsylvania, but either way, this is a huge sign of progress. It's a huge leap of Democrats from behind to in front, or at best at a statistical heat. The reason why Kamala Harris has emerged is because she connects much better than Joe Biden with younger voters. She connects much better with people of color. For example, Harris is getting incredible support from Black voters. She's getting 83% favoring her over Donald Trump right now. I suspect by election night that 83% is going to turn to about 89%, if not 91%. That's about as high as I think it'll get. This support is crucial because voters are important in the swing states. Also, Kamala Harris is seen as more trustworthy than Donald Trump in the polls. This isn't my personal opinion, although I do believe that. But on the issues of democracy, issues of handling personal issues, the personal characteristics, like, who is literally more honest, who is more trustworthy, who do you believe when they speak? All this stuff is in favor of Kamala Harris. One area, though, that is not in favor of Kamala Harris is the economy. More people, a really overwhelming number of people, favor Kamala Harris on other issues, social issues. But when it comes to that economy, boy, oh boy, they prefer Trump. Now, why is that important? Well, if you look at the most recent polls taken just from a few days ago, and this is courtesy of CNN and YouGov, if you look at the most recent polls and you look at major factors in voting for president, 83% say it is the economy. 51% say it's abortion. 56% say it's the U.S.-Mexico border. 58% say that it's gun policy. 62% say it's crime. 74% say the state of democracy. 76% say inflation, which to me is still connected to economy. And 83% say economy. So now we have to know how to read this. The economy is the thing that most people consider a major factor, but it doesn't mean that the economy is the only thing people are voting for, or that it'll necessarily be the sole decider. But it is important to know just how many people here are absolutely connected to the economy. But there are other polls that, again, are very interesting in relationship to Kamala Harris. Let's look at of people who are, going to vote. People who say they are definitely going to vote. This number is super interesting, y'all. Again, a courtesy of CNN, CBS, and YouGov. On July 18th, 81% of Democrats said that they will definitely vote. 81%. On August 4th, 85%. And now on August 19th, or August 16th, really, 87%. So there's a 6-point bump from Democrats who say they're definitely voting. And it's reasonable to assume that if you weren't definitely voting last month, and now you definitely are, it's not because you decided to vote for Trump. And similarly, on July 18th, 90% of Republicans, that's a hell of a number, 90% of Republicans said that they would definitely vote. And now it drops to 88%. And it has stayed at 88% for almost a month now. So when you look at a number like that, it shows you that the Democratic base is energized and the Republican debate is depressed just a bit. Let's look again at these national polls. Among likely voters, 51% to 48%. Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump nationally, and in the battleground states, they are at a statistical dead heat. But Kamala Harris is up uh, in most of them. I believe Donald Trump just holds a significant lead, maybe like in Ohio, which makes the overall number look even. But if you go state by state, which is what matters when you have an electoral college, whether you agree with it or not, is a different conversation. But when you get to the electoral college, it kind of matters more, where you're winning, not just if you're winning, if you get my drift. Let's look at another number here, because I thought this was a super interesting one. They asked registered voters at YouGov who is likely to fight for you. And so with each candidate, they said, how likely is this person to fight for you? Kamala Harris will fight for you. Will fight for people like you. Excuse me. That's an important addendum, for people like you. 29%. I want y'all to really pay attention to this. 29 for men. 29% of men said she'll fight a lot. 20% said some, and 50% said not much, none. That's not a good sign for Kamala Harris. Women, of course, 37% said a lot, 20 said none, 43 said not much. Now, how people interpret people like you is interesting, but it's also important to ask, is fighting for people like you the biggest thing? Because if people see the like you as a racial or ethnic identity marker versus, say, a middle class, working class kind of class marker, it just depends on how you're thinking about it. So it'll be interesting to see how that number plays out. But I want to show you what people said for Donald Trump in that same vein. Donald Trump will fight for people like you. 43% of men said a lot. 14% said some. 43% said not much, none. Now that's interesting, because that also shows you that the chasm is much bigger, right? That it's kind of an all or nothing when it comes to Donald Trump. Women 35, 11, and 54 for Donald Trump. That 54% of women don't think Donald Trump will fight for people like them is quite telling. All that to be said, Kamala Harris right now is in an enviable position. If you would have told Joe Biden that he could have the numbers that Kamala Harris has right now a month ago, he wouldn't have dropped out the race. It is just an indisputable fact that Kamala Harris has every chance to win this race. Now, some things have to change. She needs even more momentum. Her policy positions have to sort of resonate with the people. And I think Thursday's speech will do that. Remember, she's doing this before the bump. She's doing this before the convention bump. She's doing this before the Thursday speech. She could be mollywopping, to use a technical term, Donald Trump by the end of the week, or things could take a turn. It just depends on how the week goes. But the Democrats have a very well curated, as the Republicans do, convention. So I don't expect too many mistakes, just like I didn't expect too many mistakes from Republicans in their conventions. And I think you might see something special.